Hi there, welcome back to People's Internet Radio. Thanks for tuning in. This is Sunshine On. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. We have a great show lined up. I want to remind everybody that you can join in on the conversation here in the chat room. And while you are there, please remember this is a listener-supported station. We ask that you go ahead and hit that donate button. So last week, I had invited some lady friends of mine on, and we had a fantastic conversation about our role as women in the world. And so today, I thought I would balance that out and invite some great men to come on and share a little bit about their stories, their wisdom, and just basically talk about like men today in today's world and what their role is, what life is like for them, for you guys. And so, I'd like to talk about like in family units growing up and what that was like. I'd like to talk about, what it's like if they have families of their own and what that's like for them today. I'd like to talk about like what is on their minds as far as like what's going on with the government and with jobs and the struggles or triumphs they've had in those areas there in their work job, and just kind of talk about even the relationships with women, okay? Because I think it's a pretty crazy world today. We touched on this a little bit last week with the ladies, and I just...
Oh, can you call right back? I forgot. I hit the wrong button.
Yeah, you bet.
All right.
So today I have some friends of mine to join us. And I've asked Steve, my producer. You guys all know Steve. I've asked him to join in on the conversation. And so, we're just going to see where the conversation flows and get what everybody's feedback is, see what you guys think. So I'm going to be the only lady on today, and lucky me, and get to talk to some of my good friends here today. So how are you doing, Steve?
I'm very good. Thank you, Sunshine.
Hey, great. Thank you so much for joining.
I made a
Really,
mistake. I made
Go
a
ahead.
mistake there a minute ago. Your friend just called in, and I hit the wrong button. I accepted it. I
So
accepted
he's here
his
too.
call. No, he's not here yet. He's going to call right back because I have to add him to the group call. I accepted his call.
I see.
He's supposed to call right back,
Okay.
but he hasn't yet.
Yes, so that's Ryan. That would be my friend Ryan. And Ryan's an awesome person too. And that's why I'm so glad that you joined in today when I asked you to come on, because I think you're a great person as well. And I think both of you guys will be able to really add a lot to the conversation. While I'm thinking about it, actually, why don't I go ahead and give out the phone number? Like I said, you can join in the conversation in the chat room. Unfortunately, I can't do the chat room and talk on the radio at the same time because I lose my place but there's awesome people there that you can bounce your ideas and your thoughts off of. But we also have a phone number if you'd like to call in. Here in the United States, you would use our code 01. And the number is 269-409-1950. If you're in another country, then you would just put your country code at the beginning of that. So I really hope that anybody who feels so inspired to decide that they would like to give us a call and join in the conversation would love to have you.
Sunshine?
Yes?
I brought him in.
Oh, so Ryan's here with us. Hi, Ryan.
Well, hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm sitting at about a 10.
That's fantastic. See, I knew
That's
you were
way
just
up there.
Call, right?
That's way up there, right?
That's way up there, all right. So, yeah, I don't know if you heard what I was saying at the beginning of what we're going to be doing here today, but I just was wanting, last week I had some women on with me, and we talked about, our roles as women in the world today, and I wanted to get the guys' perspective on what they think about their role is and how their lives are going, what they think about in the world today. And it's that I really just want to start a conversation. I don't think that we do this enough. I think that it helps us learn about each other. It helps us begin to start thinking for ourselves again, thinking about ourselves and what it is that we are focusing on and what's important to us, to help us know that we're not alone in this situation. So I asked you to come and join us and get your feedback on all of that. So if you
Yeah.
don't mind, and I'm going to go ahead and start with you. Is that cool?
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
All right, awesome. So one of the things that I talk about is like just sharing our stories, a little bit of our stories with each other, right? To help us bond together again, because I think that the whole goal here is to bond us together again. I really don't think that we can really take care of anything else that's going on in the world until we do that first. So I'm going to ask you a little bit about what part of your story would you like to share? Maybe a little bit about how you ended up on the radio today, really, like how we met, what that a little bit of a journey was for you, and what has inspired you to communicate with people online that are outside of your everyday realm there.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. First of all, I want to thank you. I know it's been a pleasure over the last few months to get to know you. You're such a beautiful soul, and I really appreciate just getting to know you better and really listening and hearing more and more about you and just really the purpose and the mission that you have to unite people and to really just to raise that just raise the energy and the light and the love. And so I really appreciate that. And it really is an honor. And forgive me, I don't, the other guest that's on, I'm not sure who's there, but I will just say that I agree 100% with what you said. And I think that we've become such an isolated, compartmentalized group of people, and when we're in that place, we think we're the only ones, that have issues, have problems, have, are going through what we're going through. And when we can share our own stories and to compare notes, so to speak, and realize that we're not the only ones as men, as women, as whatever label you want to put on us. We're not the only ones that are going through those things. And I'll give you a quick example. I was in a group, just kind of a home fellowship style meeting where we were just kind of getting together, and 7 out of the 10 women had been sexually assaulted at some level. And had we not just been real with each other, we would have never known. And it was so healing, for everyone in that room, to be able to say, wow, I'm not the only one that has gone through that, and to see where it's held them back over time. And so I guess all of that to say, I really appreciate the opportunity to share. And I'll be glad. Yeah, I'd be glad to share, part of my journey as, and I don't really like labels, but as a man, in this world, I'll be glad to share, the part of my journey that led me to this conversation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for saying so. And I really do think that we can all, this is something, what I do is actually something that we can all do every day. And that's just to take the time to listen to each other, to ask each other questions, to get back our compassion and empathy for each other and our acceptance and tolerance. So yeah, thank you for saying so. And I really enjoy getting to know you as well. And I think that you have a lot of good things to add to this conversation. So that's why I invited you on. So yeah. So what led you down this path that you're currently on?
Sure. Yeah, you bet. Oh my gosh, I don't know how far back to go, but I'll just kind of pick a spot and go where I feel like it's relevant and valuable, to the folks that are listening. And I think it's valuable for women and men, and young men and young women alike, because I think the journey of a man in this world is incredibly important, as is the journey of a woman. And both are divine paths, and both have incredible experiences. And so for me, I think it's best to describe as really a path of remembering who I am. And I think, we're born into a world where we really kind of have amnesia. And there's things that really resonate, with our gut, so to speak, to use just the most simple terms as possible, things that we resonate with, things that we, our intuition is just, our spidey senses, so to speak, start going off the radar. But for the most part, we're just kind of wandering through, these programs, so to speak, of school and Hollywood and church, and you do your best to try to emulate what you do the best with what you know. And I grew up in a divorced household, nothing too major. I grew up on a farm, and went to school, went to college, didn't really know what I wanted to do other than I just had that kind of intuition, or I guess desire to help people. And that was the only thing that I really felt a purpose in, was to make people smile, make people happy, to work with people at some level. And I had really a lot of people in my background, the men were business-minded, so I brought that, to the table. So I got a business degree. I launched a couple of corporations at a young age. One was a nonprofit housing company. The other one was a for-profit housing company. And it was amazing. I was young, had two, multi-million-dollar companies, and thought that everything, thought that I was,
You were doing the deal.
I thought I was, man. I'll tell you what, I was definitely, yeah. So I got married like I was supposed to, according to the world and Hollywood and every church and everything. Mm-hmm. I got married, got the white picket fence and everything, and to a cheerleader / pageant queen, only child, and
you were living that narrative. You were living that narrative of what basically we're all told growing up, and what we learned growing up is that this idea, this narrative of what success is. You were living that. You were living the job, the career, the family, the house, and all of that.
Exactly. And at some levels, when I look back, it really was. I really was in a flow state, so to speak, or law of attraction mode, and I just didn't even know it. I was resonating at such a high level, just because I was in that state of love and that state of belief, and I didn't have any fear. I really hadn't learned that yet, or allowed a lot of that in, and so I was manifesting things like you would not believe, and I didn't even know it. It was just like I thought, that was kind of normal, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so then, that's when my journey as a captain of my own life, that's when it took a turn. When I decided, to go a different path, and that's when kind of the wheels fell off, and I left my wife, and just a lot of different choices. The economy collapsed in 2008, and basically was left with nothing. And I ended up meeting a gal, and she got pregnant right away, and so here I am, not even 30 years old, and I had a young man in my life, a little boy, and his mom and I had split up, and so it was that kind of that come to Jesus moment, so to speak, where I really had to take a long, hard look in the mirror and say. And then really was in the wilderness moment for me, where I just cried out and said, God, what the freak do you want from me? What is this all about?
This story that you're telling here, I think that it probably is resonating with a lot of people. I think that, that go through this journey with these, like you were saying, the Hollywood and the school system and all these things that tell us that we're supposed to be, a certain way and supposed to have and achieve certain things. And we kind of drift along following that path. And I know for myself that I never fit in that box. And so I always kind of saw it as kind of a false narrative of success. Not that success in those ways are invalid or not good things to have, but is that truly what success as a human being is? Is that kind of the moment that you were having, like questioning all of that?
Yeah, I was questioning a lot of things. There was a lot of paradigms that I had accumulated mentally, over time, based on where we're at today in society, based on, where I grew up, in a rural area, based on a lot of things, and based on what you're taught. And it just, those things don't line up with reality. And when you're really just, for me, I was just struggling to understand, my purpose on this planet, who I was, what it's all about. Because I had reached the pinnacle financially for a young kid, basically. Everything that I did was successful, and then all of a sudden the rug was pulled out, and it was, most of it, all of it was my choices and my experiences, and so
how did you get to the other side with all of that? Because obviously you really have come a long way since then, and have found a way to the other side of because I think a lot of people experienced actually what you experienced in around 2008 when the economy crashed and everything came tumbling down. And I think that happened for a lot of people. And I bet you anything that there's a lot of people that are still really, stuck or grieving or whatever it is that from that, having gone through that experience of losing everything.
Hey, Sunshine.
So,
Bruce is with us now.
Oh, great. Hi, Bruce. We're gonna let Brian finish, telling a little bit about what he's been through, because I think it's important. It's going to really open up this conversation, and then we'll go from there and get your guys' feedback on that. See if you guys have any similarities with that. So you were telling us about how you kind of got to the other side. What came out of that negative experience, which made it a positive?
Yeah, you bet. Well, in that moment, it was exactly what I said. I was literally alone in the woods by myself, screaming and having a yelling match with wherever that is, and I immediately was just overcome with peace, and that voice, whatever it is, was saying, it's time for you to be a man. It's time for you to be a man. I need you. And
wow.
whether that was the Holy Spirit, whether that was my future self, whatever you want to call that, the Heavenly Father, whatever, it's called many different names, but whatever it is, that it was that urge to be a man. And so the first thing that just fell away from me was all the negativity, all of the, quote unquote, sinful things, right? Just the things in my life that were really bringing me down. And so those things just washed away. I let go of a lot of the anger and bitterness that I had towards people.
That's a big one.
And I'm going to be brutally honest here, because you know me well enough to know that I'm real and I'm honest. And I think that's the only way for us to really be. There's too many fakers out there. And I'll say that the first thing that I did after that wilderness moment was I called up every single woman in my life and really just asked for forgiveness for the way that I had treated them, because that's the best way that I could put it. I looked at each one of them really as a piece of meat, if I'm being real. And you have no idea the release that basically the prison that it let me out of, and the healing that it gave them. And I was not a predator or anything like that.
That's
but
amazing.
I wasn't doing it the right way. I had, I was a college football official traveling around the country, had girlfriends all over the place, and it was a very insincere, very manipulative type of environment for me as a man. And, when I realized, basically, I got a opportunity to have a mirror in my life and really feel what they felt by what I was doing. And so from that point forward, it was about being an upright man, being a man with integrity and not doing it perfect. At the time we found a church to go to, and then something happened. Fast forward, we were very involved, and something happened where I had to kind of take a step back and really look at spirituality from a bigger perspective. And that's really what led me here, to communicate with, people like yourself, to be able to step back even from the religious mindset, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I will just say that if we were to talk to individuals in different denominations and religions, they would always say that it's broken. The system we have is broken, that the church is us. Church is us. It's simply those that are set apart. And
we're broken for sure.
And we need to be lifting each other up and not, the word denomination simply means divide, denominator. It comes from that word. And I think that, to look at somebody across the globe and to think that person will go to hell, to me, there's just so much more that we need to learn. And as I heard not too long ago, and I don't know about, cussing on here, but I'll just say the more blank I know, the more I know I don't know blank. That's such a powerful statement, because like the more I've been able to open and let down paradigms, the more I've been able to grow closer to the divine source.
And knowing who you really are, and genuinely knowing who you really are, right? I think that this is everything that you said. This is an amazing story to me, and truly one that really shows what we're all capable of. We're all capable of getting to going through those trials and then finding that place of connecting more to who we are, being our genuine selves, because we're raised in a world that is so disingenuine, where we're told who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act and what we're allowed to say and think. And if you don't fit in that box, then you're an outcast. And it's just really a difficult time, I think, that we've all lived in our lives thus far. And for anybody who, for myself, it was, that moment when I opened my eyes and took a look around and felt like I was on another planet. And then realizing that my entire life had really been nothing more than a deceptive manipulation, and by whatever powers that shouldn't be, who control our undereducation system, and the programming and just all of that goes on. For me too, it was how I related with two other women. I'm a very down to earth person, and I used to find that other women were they had a different mask on depending on who it was they were talking to, and so I really didn't have. And a lot of it went back to my 14-year-old girl, And then I realized one day that, really women and men as well were raised from the time we're born, and men are supposed to do this and women are supposed to do this and act this way and say that, but especially women being objectified, they really never get a chance to really know who they really are. And I think that that's what this all boils down to, and in your story as well, that you stopped and went within yourself and connecting to your creator and trying to figure out who you really are, your genuine self, and having that integrity as a human being, and getting back our humanity would be the goal here. So, Bruce, thank you for calling in, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. I hope you can stay on with us and continue on with the conversation as well. I'd like to hear what Bruce thinks about that, what he can relate to in your story. Now, Bruce, thanks for coming on with us. And you're another radio host that I know, and also have been on PIR here, People's Internet Radio, as well. And so we're talking today with you guys to see what your guys' story is, what you guys think about this world today, and where you're coming from, because I had the ladies on last week. So I'd like you to chime in and, you know, what can you relate to with that personal story, or do you have one of your own that you'd like to share as far as your journey and as being a man and what that means to you in this world today?
Sure. Hi, Ryan. Hi, Steve.
Yeah, likewise. Nice
Hello.
to meet you as well.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi. Well, you know, okay, so I think that Ryan sounds, a bit younger, maybe in his, how old are you, Ryan, in your 30s?
Yeah, 30, going to be 37 next month.
Okay, so I'm 51, 52 in July, so I'm just a little, I guess, one if you call a generation in the modern world kindergarten to grade 12, like finishing high school, I'm one generation ahead of you. And given that our relationships with women start in school right from an early age, I guess that's where it all begins. So I was raised by parents who were a little bit older than the baby boom generation. Very strict Scottish Catholic family. Very strict. My mother was actually a nun, a Carmelite, before she got married. So my parents are still together. By any reasonable definition, they probably should have gotten divorced. Like there's no way, had they tried their two personalities together 20 years later with all of the new cultural influences and social influences, that they would have stayed together. But what I noticed in my upbringing was that the family was something that you served, that you didn't sort of dominate it. You weren't there to get just your needs fulfilled. And this general respect for the object institution of the family was there at a natural and spiritual level, which is defined by dependencies. There are things women can't do, and there are things that men can't do. And together we can do everything. And understanding that and sharing those dependencies, by my experience, is the key to a successful relationship. Now, they're very hard. It's very hard to do, though. Nobody really wants to be dependent on anybody anymore. I mean, an interesting thing is the generation I see coming up now in their 20s, I see a lot of women returning to the traditional role, staying at home with the kids and stuff like that. And I don't think that this third wave of feminism is really taking off, except in the pure ideologues, the cultural Marxists. And a lot of people, because of the efforts to extend the movement into new ideological frontiers, are abandoning even its fundamentals. But the main thing that really changed was our relationship to nature, because that's where dependencies arose. There was a certain amount of work necessary to be done in and around a house, which was generally a female province, and then there was a certain amount of work to be done out near the house. And that was generally the province of the male. And these roles were separated due to endurance, strength, ability, all of these sorts of things. And once those roles began breaking down and we started living in a man-made environment, and that's what a city is, folks. It's a man-made environment. It's fascinating. If you look at a picture of a city from above, it looks exactly like a semiconductor, a blown-up image of a semiconductor. So we're living in a man-made system, and that system, because its principal glue, at least in the democratic capital-based Western world, is consumption. We've created a culture of individuality that is so entrenched now that the slightest blow to ego will destroy marriages. I've seen friends divorce, and I mean people with graduate degrees, extremely successful people. I've seen people divorce for the stupidest and slightest. I'm afraid to even give any examples because, well, they're probably not listening, and I don't have to use. I had a friend in Canada who was a semi-famous film director. He cast his wife in one of his films. It won awards. It went on to do a big Cirque Festival tour in Europe. and they broke up over who got the most attention over the film, because she was the female lead and he was the director. And I remember, and they had two beautiful.
They made a movie out of that.
No, this really happened. This really happened. Okay, and I remember, and what that is evidence of is this highly cultured negative sense of self we have, this ego that's constantly reinforcing everything we do, and it's so fragile. And an ego, family is sustained by beings, not by these artificial constructs called egos. So we've got society working against us. We've got a militant, angry, and sexually disoriented third wave of feminism. And the prospects are not looking that good. I don't know, Ryan, if you're married now, or you're probably doing the single dad thing. I did that. I divorced when my son was 2.5, and I didn't want to get divorced.
So what was that like being a single dad? I mean, like what?
Well, I never lived further than a half a mile or a mile. I'll speak standard. I'm Canadian. I was going to say kilometer, but from
so
my son.
You were one of those guys who did the step up
thing. I lost 15 years of my life. I had no female companionship for 15 years, because every time I brought a woman into my life, it got to the point where they were jealous of my son. And the only way you can remedy that is if you marry a woman with children approximately the same age as your kid, and you roll the dice and try to do the blended family thing. But a woman a woman with no children is going to be jealous of your child. There's a lot of myths out there,
That's interesting. I've never.
For instance, in Canada, I don't know about the United States or Europe, but in Canada, we're trying to legitimize Happy Stepfather's Day to have equal standing with Happy Father's Day. Okay, so why is so much work being done on redefining that role, but the old myth of the wicked stepmother still exists? Women, here's a little truth, okay? Women don't bond with other women's children, and that's been put into them by nature. Okay, you can have affection.
I totally disagree with you on that.
Okay, change my mind.
Yeah, I would disagree with you on that, because, well, I can only speak for myself, but I don't think that that's an uncommon thing. I think that women are natural nurturers, and if you are a woman who has children or has any involvement with children, that's a natural bonding kind of nurturing thing. So it doesn't really matter whose child it is. That's our instinct, is to nurture that child. So I find it really interesting that you would have that take on it.
Sunshine Bruce.
It's not a take. Sorry. I mean, I'm right. You're wrong. You just haven't realized it yet. No, seriously, I've lived this stuff. I'm not making it up. I've seen, and women from different cultures, maybe at a certain age when the kid is semi-autonomous, I should refine my argument a little bit. I mean, if you're divorced and you've got a 13 or a 14-year-old son or daughter, and you go out and you get a new life mate, and this common law partner moves in with you, they're going to form a relationship with your nearly adult offspring. I'm talking when you're really young and your child is like 3 or 4 years old. And then women don't cooperate in child rearing unless they're lesbians. No offense. These are my observations. Okay. So if the new girlfriend gets too involved in the biological child's life, when the child is spending time with dad, then the biological mother is going to get upset. You're going to have a lot of problems there. I've seen this two dozen times in my life. Mm-hmm.
See, I think that is exactly what it's more about. I think it is more about that. Look, guys, no doubt, women are screwed up. Okay, we have completely lost our minds. Okay, I think you guys have too, but I'm going to keep it real. We have too, as women. I think that this whole concept of using our children against each other as adults, as parents of those in co-parenting a child, I just have never ever agreed with that. It is definitely mostly women who cause those problems, and it's really unfortunate. But I think that it probably it's rooted in this, the way that women have been objectified, and their lack of their own power. It's been taken away from us. And so maybe in this whole dynamic of divorce, that there is a power play assertion that's going on there, then it just really gets out of control. And unfortunately, the kids are the ones that suffer the most from that. Okay.
Can I jump in on that, Sunshine?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
I think opinions are amazing. But I've got an interesting study. My profession, right, is setting up. I guess my mission in life right now is to defeat poverty. And so I set up social enterprises around the world, and I'm really charged with understanding if you want to take people out of the poverty, it's mostly really a mindset, and to the relevance here is that to get to the root of why people are in poverty, or why people are insecure, especially in a relationship, that mindset. There's a very powerful statement that says not all children will grow up to be adults, but all adults were once children. And I think where I'm going with this is that we have really done a poor job. It really only takes about 2 generations of working with kids and really not empowering them, but not only that, taking it to a whole nother level, but traumatizing these kids with toxic stress. There was a beautiful study done on accident called the ACEs study. It was done around in the 90s, I believe, but it came up with some really profound insight into the link between early childhood, adverse childhood experiences and that effect on that child as an adult. And we can go back and forth all day long about the fruit on the problem tree here, but let's get down to the root, and I think we can really get some real substantive conversation. And whether it's the men or the women, you can argue both sides, but I really believe that at the root cause is that if we could see other people as a beautiful child that's just got a pile of shit on them, right? From the time they're young, that woman in your life or the man in your life, we're looking at them and we're really afraid to face ourselves most of the time, and so we find all the crap in them, and so I think that really where we need to come to, or where I think it's coming to ultimately is really the Enlightenment age is coming forward, is really being able to face your own demons, face your own, go within. Clean your own cup, right? Fill your own cup with love yourself, heal the wounds from when you were a kid. And I don't want to sound like a therapist here, because I'm not, but the reality is I can't, and this is the problem I ran into with religion, real fundamental religion, was I can't pour out my love and light onto other people from an empty cup. And so I think that when we can start there, then all the other labels and other crap just don't matter on the people around us. And so if a woman is insecure
and having more empathy and compassion for each other, more tolerance and just basic understanding for each other and where we come from, and being able to communicate with each other on those different levels. Once we can have a better understanding of our own, how we got to be who we are and where we are, we can then turn and look at another person, and not just from a superficial or a labeling or in generalization statements. We can actually see the person rather than all women or all men. I think you're absolutely right about that. What about you?
We're all one. We got to get out of the dual nature of it, because if we fuel it and we give emotional power to it, it's we're a part of the problem, not the solution.
Right. What do you think about that, Steve? Like what Bruce was talking about and what we're saying here.
Well, hello once again, Bruce, and hello once again, Ryan. Howdy. Hi. I wanted to first set up by saying I'm not much older than you, Bruce. I'll be 54 in just a couple months here. I was also born and raised into a pretty strict Christian family. And at the age of 8, my mother finally had enough of my father, pretty much the sperm donor, what you want to call him. Anyways, he was 11 years older than my mother. Don't really know what she's seen in him, but hey, I'm here because of it. So is my younger brother. But
right. We're glad to have you, Steve.
Anyways, I see a major problem with marriage and divorce today is probably in the last 20 plus years, people are falling in lust. They don't fall in love anymore. There's this, I don't know what
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't even know what you want to call it,
Totally agree.
social norm or something like that. There's some sort of a rule that after 8 dates or 12 dates, the people are the man and woman or man and man, whatever the case is, woman and woman are supposed to have sex after like 8 or 12 dates or whatever the case is. And then
this is exactly what I'm talking about when I've talked to some friends of mine, some male friends who are out there dating or what have you. And he's telling me these stories of like, and all I can think to myself is, what are these people who are supposed to be in their 50s? Are they like in 5th grade? It really was mind blowing to me. Like, and then it was all overthinking and all over like, it was this game. It literally, this game that was being played rather than everyone just being themselves.
Yeah.
Just be yourself.
Exactly. A couple of years back, maybe even 3, I seen a social experiment, where some psychologist or sociologist or something like that went into some high schools in California. And, it was almost like a litmus test for dating for the high schoolers. There were in this test girls. They're not women yet because they are girls and they're still in high school that 13, 14, 15, they're sexually active and they have the idea that, after so many dates, her and the boy is supposed to have sex, or if the boy spends so much money on her on a date or whatever, she's supposed to put out. And, it's...
Oh my gosh. See, this is just horrible hearing something like this.
Yeah.
And where does that come from? And I would have to attribute a lot of it to Hollywood.
Yeah. Well,
the movies and thinking that this is what love is. It's portrayed as this whole romance and love, okay, folks, is more than the feeling of compassion. Now, when my parents told me that when I was in my early 20s, they were concerned about a boy that I was dating. And they said, yeah, love is more than the feeling of compassion. Well, I didn't know what the heck they meant. I had no idea what they meant. It took years. I wish they would have expounded on it then. Probably would have saved me a lot. But it took me years to figure out what they meant. And love is more than just a feeling of compassion. It is the compromise, the kindness, the friendship, the trust, just all of those things that kind of go under that umbrella. So it's in our actions and it's in the way that we talk to each other. It's in how we treat each other. So in Hollywood, I just see it being portrayed as this, it's all sexual. It's all this whole romance. And if you're not getting this romance that, then you're not being loved.
I think
women really fall into this whole mindset of, if a man isn't spending this kind of time with them or this amount of money on them, then they're not being loved. And how sad is that?
Yeah.
When they could be being respected by somebody, and that is a step up from the world right there.
I think there's been a time probably within the last 118 years, in the last century and a quarter almost, that men and women have forgotten what they were all about. Not just, the man goes out and makes the money and the woman stays home and she's barefoot and pregnant and yada, yada, yada. That doesn't always mean that. What that means is, I know I was taught when I was a boy, or not really taught. My dad tried to teach me this. go out and have your fun, and then when you want to get married, settle down and find a nice girl. But,
And right. And wait, let me stop you right there, because who are you supposed to be going and having fun with?
uh-huh.
All those women that you would then, by having that fun with them, okay, are being hurt.
Right. But I never bought that. I never did that.
Well, I'm not saying that you did, but I just wanted to expound on that, because that is what happens.
Yeah.
And it's gotten so bad today that I think that women have somewhere in their minds have told themselves, I can be that friend with benefits and it's going to be fine.
I think in the last decade or so, the stigmata of being a slut or a whore has gone away, because, there are plenty of girls that have this Hollywood image, like you said, and you call them a slut or a whore, and they get a big smile on their face and say thank you.
Well, see, I don't buy into the whole slut or whore thing either, okay? Because I think that when you're comfortable in your sexuality and it's two consenting adults, you should be able to do whatever you want.
Sure.
It's the whole concept of, this is where I come from. For me, I hear it all the time from men. Well, I told her that we're just friends. So she knew, and so what is she getting all hurt about?
Uh-huh.
Okay, and they use that as a cop-out, because women are just the way that they are, and they can lie to themselves all they want, and there's, I'm sure, some women who actually do have that mindset where I can be the friends with benefits and be just fine with that, and that's fine. But I think that, especially because women are more feeling-based than men are, that their feelings do get hurt when they are intimate with somebody, if that it becomes a deeper thing for them than it does for a man. Not all men, not all women, okay? We're kind of talking in general here. But I think if a man knows anything about a woman, that he knows that that's where women go, that their feelings get attached, that their feelings get all up in it. And to use the cop-out statement, well, I told her that we were just friends, and so she should know, is, to me, it's just a cop-out of a way of being able to use women and not be accountable for how they make them feel.
Looks like we lost Ryan there, but I also wanted to say, Sunshine, that I think there was a time also in this last 120 years or whatever it's been, that there's been some sort of a competition between men and women as far as the marriage thing goes. That also puts a lot of strife on a relationship too, I believe. I think maybe the feminist movement might have something to do with that. I don't really know, but there seems to be some sort of me against you sort of thing too.
Well, I would agree with that. This has all been by design, in my opinion.
Certainly.
I think that women have been oppressed. Our roles within the family unit, within the community, within, the glue that keeps us all bound together, has been totally removed, basically removed, okay? They have not allowed women to take that role. And then they were manipulated into this whole, we want equal rights, which we should have equal rights, but somewhere along the line it became this narrative came into play where a stay-at-home mom or the role of a woman within the family unit did not have as much value as a man's role. And because of that,
a value in which way? A value in which way?
Well, just that they have equal value. Men and women have equal value in their roles within the family unit, within the community, what have you, even though those roles are very different. Now, I'm not saying that women can't do it all. I'm not saying that women shouldn't participate in the business world. I'm not saying that at all. I think that women did drop the ball, though, in discounting their own value of as women, as mothers, as the nurturers, as the glue that keep us bonded together. And because we fed into this our own oppression, and I see this within races as well, at any rate, we fed into our own oppression, and our fight back was to an extreme And then we gave up the value of our role. And
Absolutely.
And I think by the time that we realized it, it was already too late, what was happening to the family dynamic and how it was breaking down and how it's affected. It's pervasive in society, where we are not bounded to ourselves even anymore.
Absolutely.
I think, let alone to each other.
I think this adrenaline-seeking lifestyle of the last 40, 50 years also has a lot to do with it. I don't really know about the past, but my grandparents' generation, they didn't do a lot of the things that we did, and they seemed to be a lot more happier than what people are today, because they did have the traditional family, and they did have morals. And I'm not talking about religious morals. I'm just talking about morals. You don't have to be religious to have good moral standing.
Right. So here's what we're going to do, folks. I think this might be a good spot right here. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break. And we're going to come back. We're going to let Bruce continue to tell us more about his story and his thoughts on everything. Are you going to be able to come back with us, Bruce?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So we'll take that 5-minute break. Again, if anybody would like to join in the conversation, I'd love to have you. I'm going to go ahead and give out the number now, and when we get back, the number to call in is 01, if you're in the United States, 269-409-1950. I'm so happy with the way this conversation is going. I'm learning a ton from you guys. Thank you all, and please come back and hear us out in the next hour. Alrighty then, welcome back to People's Internet Radio. This is Sunshine On, and we are going to continue our conversation in this next hour. We're talking to the men today. We had a great conversation with some ladies last week, and so I wanted to give the guys their voice too. I have to tell you, I really want to thank Ryan and Steve and Bruce for coming on and sharing some of their stories. And I've learned a lot already, and I think this is exactly what's going to help us remember who we really are and also be able to better understand each other. So I encourage anybody who's listening, if you feel so inspired to chime in on the conversation, love to hear your perspective on things. If you're a man, the number is 269-409-1950. Anybody's welcome to call in. So, right, we were going to go ahead and jump back over here to Bruce, and because he was telling about what it was like for him to be a divorced father, what that meant for him, and how that played out for him. And I think that there's probably a lot of people who know exactly what you're talking about. Just because I may not agree with it or I have a different perspective on it doesn't mean that wasn't that's your life and it's your take on your experience. And I'm sure that there's other men who can relate to that, absolutely. So I just wanted to give you, Bruce, an opportunity to carry on with that part of your story and that part of the conversation. Is he there with us? Are you on mute? Okay, well, maybe he had to step away for a second. So let's go ahead and we'll just keep on going, Steve. So,
okay, that's fine.
Right? So I do think it's really interesting. We were just talking off air. What were you saying to me off of air? Short-term memory loss, right?
I do too, yeah. I remember 45, 50 years ago, but not 30 seconds ago.
I suffer from the same thing, I swear.
I got CRS.
So I think that we were just basically talking about how some of these roles have gotten skewed, twisted up, falsely narrated through Hollywood. We've got dysfunctional families to such a degree now. It's within all of our society, these dysfunctional families. And almost everyone, it seems, comes from a divorced family, which is really mind-blowing. And it's rare when you hear of somebody whose parents have been together the whole time.
Right, right.
And how does that work? What makes that work? I know for my parents, I mean, I really lucked out with my mom and my stepdad. They are amazing people. I literally have never heard them raise their voices to each other. They're equal partners in their relationship together, in making life decisions together, family decisions together. And they're also, I think part of what that makes that dynamic work for them is they allow each other to do their own thing. Whatever that thing is, whatever their interest is. Like my dad's really into playing softball. My mom, I don't think in all the years, my whole life, 50 years that my dad's been playing ball, I don't think my mom's gone to but maybe 2 games. And that's okay. He doesn't need her to be there. He doesn't think that she, isn't participating in what he likes to do. She allows him to do his thing, and vice versa. My mom volunteers at the library now. She's always been into sewing and stuff like that. So they give each other that opportunity to be themselves, but then at the same time are also very equal in their relationship and what they do with each other. So, and if they have disagreements, they communicate. And if you don't have communication skills, then I think it's probably one of the top 5 in a relationship. And unfortunately, today especially, it is this whole thing about communicating with each other that we've lost. We've lost the whole verbal communication with each other. We've lost the visual communication with each other. We're down to this very disconnecting, texting and chatting, and misunderstandings happen that way. And, you can be rude to somebody or disrespectful or a bully and just, block those people and not even have to think twice about how they are affected by the things that you do and say. And it is bleeding into our roles as men and women, and our roles as being part of humanity in this world. So no wonder we're falling apart.
Yeah.
So that's my goal, is to start talking about these things again, things that we haven't talked about in a long time, and letting people know that they're not alone in what they're going through in their life journey and their stories, and sharing that with each other is really what I think is going to really help bond us together again, start helping us to be more self-aware about ourselves, and then sharing, how we got through it. Yeah. How did you get through that circumstance? What worked for you? Might not work for me, but it just might. But at least I know I'm not alone, because I'm going through the same thing.
You know what? I also think, Sunshine, that it's probably been within the last 200 years. I did mention that. Well, I did say earlier about the people have forgotten their roles in that. It also has been within the last 150 to 200 years that the elite families and the ones that are in control, they've made a lot of these things that they have always enjoyed as a luxury more of a necessity to us common people, and that has really gone a long ways into changing socially how people think. We never used to have the me things back 100 plus years ago, between 100 and 200 years ago. And then things started changing. People used to farm. They would grow their own food, and the ones that were lucky enough to sell some of their crop off to make a few extra bucks or quit or whatever the case is, they might have been able to have bought other things, but for the most part, people made what they needed as far as food and toys or whatever to please the children. But people were farmers, and then there was a time that it started changing. There was a time in America here where.
So was that industrialization? Because
probably
what came to my mind when you were saying that was that we used to know how to make sacrifices.
Yes, and
that is
you sacrifice for the family
as well. Yes, that's part of love as well. That compromise and that sacrifice. And I honestly, I've talked about this before too. That is going to come into play in making changes in this world. If you're not willing to make some sacrifices, then nothing's going to change. We're going to have to do that. sometimes even some big sacrifices, if we want to leave these systems that have been keeping us enslaved, that have been mind controlling us and programming us, and with these false narratives of success and false narratives of what women are supposed to be and what men are supposed to be. I watch the television shows and kids are watching today. You were talking about sexuality in teenagers who are still in high school, 14 years old kind of thing. I was mind blown with my own children and their friends and how sexually active they were, and how the blurring of gender lines in that even as well. And where did that come from? And
society.
And you look at the kind of TV shows that are on today. Now, I rent out a couple of rooms in my house, which allows me to be retired, usually to men that I rent them out to, because it just works out better. They have to share a bathroom with each other, so that just works. So I had turned on Game of Thrones. I've never seen it before. And I flipped that on the TV, and I'm sitting there in the living room, and I'm freaking out because I'm feeling so uncomfortable with the sexuality that's coming over the TV screen. It was like, it's definitely soft porn. I'm thinking to myself, kids are watching this with their parents even, you know? And no one's thinking about that, and how uncomfortable it was just thinking that maybe my roommate might walk out of his room and see this is on TV, and how uncomfortable that would feel, you know? Yeah. So we're just getting so desensitized through this programming of these false narratives and these TV shows that are, you know, trying to change our reality, because that's what the programming is doing.
Yeah.
And making us desensitized to violence, desensitized to sexuality, all of those things. Well, and our kids are literally being programmed by that.
Certainly they are. Also today, in the last decade or so, there are different social meanings for things. A lot of children don't consider, well, I guess it goes around the schools and stuff like that, it's, you know, the unwritten rules that parents don't know about. But,
right.
Oral sex and anal sex isn't considered sex anymore to children. If it's not,
and I think we can all thank President Clinton for that, right? Really, that has got to be where that started.
No, Mom, we're not having sex in the traditional word.
I really do think that is where that started.
Yeah,
is when you tried to say that.
It depends.
I did not have
sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I did not.
Look at you!
How dare you! You right winger, you're just trying to get me.
Right. And I know that, you know, for this whole concept of friends with benefits thing too, and how that is just, I think that women more often than not, that they think that they're fine with that. But then at the end of the day, maybe years down the road, that ends up not being okay. That they are affected and hurt by having engaged in that way. And then having engaged in that way, then, you know, years have gone by, and now you want something more in life, but there's making room for that, and you're not as young as you were. And there's so much that goes into just that whole thing with sex and just our being female and male, and what that means, and how it was very interesting how the church, you know, you hear the stories all the time how the Catholic girls are always the ones who are more promiscuous than anybody else. Then it's the whole, if you tell us that we can't do it, kids, okay, tell us you can't do it, then we're going to do it, and, you know, we're definitely going to do it.
Well, that's
right.
That's just not a modern thing. That's happened all over historical times there.
So if you think about that, and that's just kind of how we operate as humans, you can see why it would be very easy to influence the way that we think about things, and use that against us in manipulating us in our roles as men and women, in how we're relating to each other. And it really is about taking our power and control back individually over our own thoughts and choosing what we're paying attention to, choosing to respect ourselves and respect others, choosing
Absolutely.
to pay attention to what it is that we're saying and how we're saying it, choosing to put ourselves in other people's shoes.
Absolutely.
Men can put their themselves in the shoes of a woman as well. And that's why it's such a cop out to me. This whole, I told her we were just friends. That's a freaking cop out.
Yeah.
Because that women feel more.
Yeah. It looks like
it
looks like Bruce is back here now.
Oh, good. Yeah, Bruce, I was just, when we came back at the top of the hour, I was hoping to give you an opportunity to finish your train of thought and where you were going as far as what it's like to be a single dad in today's world. I find it fascinating because I had no idea. I hadn't heard that from anybody else, but I bet you it's more common than I realize.
Well, there's
of women who their expectation in engaging in a relationship is being the focal point of a man's affection, and how that being distracted by their child somehow equates to them being jealous. That is just mind-blowing to me.
Oh, yeah. Is that the first time you're hearing that?
Yes, it is. It is.
Oh, it's rampant. It's rampant. I mean, where do you think we get it in mythology? The wicked stepmother. This idea that women don't bond with another woman's children has been endemic. If you look at the lore of our culture since the beginning of time.
Well, this is programming, Bruce. Though I hope you realize.
No. Not in its no. The Grimm's fairy tale is not programming. No, I don't think it is programming. Not at that level. What we're going through now is programming. There's a massive effort to redefine what's going on here.
Understand that Disney is the whole princess and prince and all that. That's been programming. Look, that's been going on just as long as the Grimm's fairy tales. All fairy tales.
Well, no, not really, but
all fairy tales are just programming. They are. Whether it's fairy tales, scary story fairy tales, whether they're all programming. Absolutely. So I would have to disagree with you on that for sure. I think that it has been a part of the programming for a very long time to demonize the stepmother. And have we then been programmed additionally to actually fall into that role as the evil stepmother? I don't think it is absolutely not women's nature to not bond with all children. It is our core nature as a woman, as the nurturer.
Yeah, I would say that's true. When you look at industries like Montessori and daycare and early childhood development, they're dominated by women because women feel that they have the natural ingredient to go into that field. So I agree with you on one level, but what I think you're missing here is that when a woman has her own nest and she's like her own home, she wants her progeny there. Now, it can be a mix, depending on the ages, of his family and her family, but for the most part, women really want to create their own kids. They don't want to raise another woman's kids. Now, my condition is where the biological mother is still alive and still active in the child's role. I can't believe I'm out on a limb here. Steve, have you seen what I'm talking about? Have you seen any friends go through the new melded family and talk to you over coffee about problems with the ex, the biological mother, or problems with the new one? Okay, it's endemic. I don't know why. I don't know why you're fighting this, Sunshine.
I get it, Bruce. The biological mother. Okay, that's just nonsense. Literally.
Well,
it is nonsense for two adults who are
adults.
Parents,
You can't.
No, women want to be the imprinting factor on the children. The biological mother wants to be the duck that the ducklings follow.
But you can't.
And
she's their mother, and
so how do you think she responds when a stepmom comes on the scene?
This is where it's got messed up.
This is
where women are messed up.
It's not just women either. It's not just women either. It's men.
It's men too. You're absolutely right.
I also want to say that just because you're over the age of 18 or 21, that doesn't make you an adult.
Well, true that. I mean, look around.
Just because you have a penis and a set of testicles, that don't make you a man.
Right.
And just
Right.
because,
So,
yeah,
right. So this is, it's disgusting. I think it's really disgusting. And I'm going to say it straight up. I think it's disgusting what women do in divorce situations where they use their children to get back at the hurt that they're feeling from that marriage not working out. Our children should never be used in that way. We should be grown up enough to be able to co-parent our children.
I was used that way.
Yeah, and it really is disgusting to me. I don't get it. That wasn't something that happened in my divorce, because I verbalized that I would not allow that to happen. I verbalized that that is their dad. They will always have access to him. He will always have access to them, no matter what. I could care less if he wants to pay child support or not. That's their dad, right? So this I don't get it, guys. I don't get it. Now, I can understand now there's respect, though, too, because as the mom in a divorce situation, and those are my children, and I should be the domineering force in saying how I want those children to be raised, what they're exposed to. But that would not prevent me from allowing another woman, as long as she's not abusing them, right? As long as she may be doing something that I don't agree with. And that's where we're adults. We should be able to have a conversation with each other and respect for each other. Yes, you are their mother. I will respect you for that, and I will stop doing what I'm doing. Okay? It isn't about you're still trying to be in my new husband's life, and so what are you doing, you person who's the mom of these children, right? It's not like that. It should be, I respect you. You're their mother. I can agree to that. And if we just start respecting each other and who we are and just who we are, then this wouldn't go on. But we don't know how to respect each other. We don't know how to treat each other as equals. We devalue ourselves even in this game that's been played with us and through all these false narratives. A lot of times we don't even realize that we've adopted some of these mindsets and how they're influencing ourselves in functioning in our own lives, let alone being able to get along with others. We don't even realize it. I didn't realize that I had a victim mentality for years and years and years. I mean, even when it was called to my attention, I would have argued to the nth degree that I didn't. That in fact I did.
In your defense, though, that's one of the most difficult consciousness parasites to get rid of is victim consciousness.
Yeah. Well, once I know this just from my own experience, that once you have recognition about something, you have the ability to change. It doesn't happen overnight, but once you recognize it and you start seeing it play out, then you can stop yourself from, continuing in those behaviors. And it takes time. It's a breaking of old habits, breaking of old ways of thinking, and that's all it is. And that's actually pretty easy to do once you're conscious of it and self-aware. And this is where we as a society and humanity, we are not self-aware of what it is that we're really doing or thinking or how we're acting. We don't pay attention to ourselves. We're more focused on everybody else and what they're doing. Now, granted, that might be a lot easier sometimes to point out everybody else's flaws instead of taking a look at our own. And I'll tell you, if we don't start taking a look at ourselves and being self-aware of what it is that we're doing, then we're just going to continue to be manipulated.
Sunshine, I think we've been talking about this forgetting our roles and all that. I think also as humans, we've forgotten what a human role to be a human is. We're supposed to be we're supposed to be nurturing. We're supposed to be giving. I think these stories, I don't know whether they're mythological stories, but they seem to be mythological stories about the Amazon women. They were in control of every aspect of all of their society, and I don't know if they actually existed or not, but I think maybe that there was a time where women did have more of a role, and some men got together and they didn't really like that fact, and they didn't really like that thought, and they changed things.
I would have to say it goes all the way back to the Adam and Eve story, if you ask me.
Could be.
But we won't go there.
Well,
okay.
There is a funny about Adam and Eve you just mentioned there. There is a story that the first woman that was made by God, her name was
Lilith.
Lilith, yeah. And supposedly Lilith wasn't subservient to Adam, and he told God that he wanted someone else.
Well, here's kind of how that story goes. And I do think that the serpent actually got into Adam's ear first, if you want to use the biblical terminology, okay? That it was the serpent who got in Adam's ear first and said, "You are the man. You are supposed to be dominant over her," okay? And then if you read the story, he actually approaches Lilith and says this to her, that he wants to be dominant over her always, and that's how it's supposed to be. And she's like, "Screw you. That's not going to happen." Okay.
Oh, well.
Sometimes I want to be on top. Okay. That's basically what she said. And it is a sexual, story that they're kind of talking there. Okay. In the scripture. And people don't realize that. And so then, she took off. She's like, "Screw you. I'm taking off," and then the story just goes on from there. But yeah, I think that actually if you look into all the different cultures and societies that have come and gone in our history, that women did within the tribe have more of a domineering role in making tribal decisions, just like the woman in the house. It is her role in that house is to make some of those decisions about the family unit in keeping that family unit bonded together. And when that's been removed, no wonder we're not bonded together as people. It's just been removed from bottle feeding because we went to engage in the workforce, which just put money in other people's pockets. It just made us more in debt because the false narrative of success, getting the picket house with the picket fence and all that. And by the time we realized it, then we were already two income mortgaged up, and then this whole disconnecting thing, in the roles that how it's affected the family unit, and look at the divorce rate. Our children are disconnected from us. They don't have respect for themselves or others. We don't respect each other within, a husband and wife. It's just the dysfunction is so pervasive. I really think that is part of the core to what's going on today is that.
Yeah, but you see the big picture, right? It's not a human failure. It's a systemic endeavor, right? Mm-hmm. So, human relations were sustained by dependencies. Okay, men have certain dependencies on women, and women have certain dependencies on men. And what happened?
There for that.
Yeah, and what happened is the government came in and took those roles away. And, we call this progress, but I don't think it is progress. I think that it's a deliberate attempt to sabotage procreation and to create a population that is more malleable to government control.
I agree. It's all fitting right into the whole transhumanism agenda.
Well, what do we know? What do we know now? We know that Gloria Steinem was a lifetime CIA asset. She joined the CIA in college. They gave her writing grants to publish her books. First wave of feminism. Now, why would the Central Intelligence Agency, which is by law prohibited from acting domestically, be using somebody like Gloria Steinem? I would wager my last dollar that Hugh Hefner was a CIA asset as well. So they're going at the female, they're going at the male, they're giving the male what he wants. Everybody's going to just consume in that moment of satisfaction. Everybody's locked in these short cycles of satisfaction. It's the Playboy Playmate for the man, and it's the independence and sense of autonomy for the woman, which is erroneous because the female was not created to be autonomous. And that's a self-evident fact. The only reason we can even pretend
that human beings were created to be autonomous. I think that we were created to be bonded together just like all the other animal species. they're bonded together. They communicate in a bonded way. They function within their environments in a bonded way. We're the only species that destroys the environment that we live in.
Sunshine.
Because we're so disconnected.
Yeah, but we're not an animal. That's the difference.
I think it's also
Yes.
also no accident that we've been being attacked the last 40 plus years chemically, and that is changing the behavior.
Absolutely.
Chemistry,
Yeah.
the testosterone. We're losing testosterone in men.
Yes.
We're women, and absolutely good point.
There's
We're starting to see it too, because I'll tell you what, men, excuse me, if you were to ask women out there, they would tell you that where are all the real men? Okay, the real men who stand up and in defense of what is right, who stand up and defend their families, and if you are a man and you know that your family, that you personally even, I think it just as a human being, it doesn't really matter, men or women, if you know you're being poisoned intentionally,
Yes.
why are we not standing up and saying enough's enough? What is it that's stopping us from doing that? It's because we are disconnected. We are disconnected from ourselves. We're disconnected from each other. We are not empowered anymore because we don't know who we are. We don't feel as though we could do anything about anything ourselves.
Yeah. Look.
Well, that's why they collapsed the middle class in North America, right? This is a controlled demolition, just like 9/11. And what they saw with the advent of the middle class was an ungovernable population that asked the kind of questions you're asking. But to answer your question, because there is an answer to your question, most men and most women don't stand up now because they're afraid of losing their job, right? They're afraid of losing their livelihood, whether it be whistleblowers or whomever. Do you know that the Obama administration prosecuted more
whistleblowers? They'll lose their home, and because they're sick, they'll lose their health insurance. Yes, It is all fear-based. It's all absolutely fear-based. Why we aren't doing anything about it.
Well,
this fear is an illusion, people, okay? Fear is an illusion. It only has power if you feed into it. Because I promise you, if we all stood up together and stopped going to work to get their attention, stopped the money-making machine, because that's all we are parts of a money-making machine for somebody else's profit. That's what we were raised to do in school. That's what we were taught to do in our undereducation system, to become part of the working machine.
Part of the collective.
I guarantee you, if we were to all stop going to work one day and stop paying our bills, stop buying stuff, that it would have such an impact worldwide in the money-making machine, okay, within just a few days, it would be so trillions of dollars would be lost. And it would get their attention. We would take back our power and control. Just that easy. But see, people are afraid. They're afraid if they don't pay their bill, then their house is going to be, going to foreclosure. They'll be kicked out on the street. They won't be able to pay their rent. They think that the health insurance that they need for their kid who has diabetes that was given to them by this disgusting big pharma, you tell me that they didn't know that sugar was a poison to us.
Exactly.
Okay?
Cancer feeds on sugar.
They knew. And it is all been by design.
They knew back in the 1870s that.
I understand where the fears come from, but here's the reality. Within 3 days, and if we all did it at the same time, within 3 days we would have power of the people back. I guarantee you, if they'd shut off the power grid, that'd be the best thing that ever happened to us.
Yeah.
We'd start talking to each other again. We'd get to know our neighbors. I guarantee you that no one's going to starve to death because we're going to step up to the plate and help out.
Do you know what? If there is no us, and what if there is no us anymore, Sunshine? What if there is no us? What if there is no us? You're talking about standing up in collective solidarity. We saw this all through the 70s and 80s. We saw Lech Walesa do it in Poland, one of the instrumental figures in bringing
the street, okay, and that didn't work. and it still doesn't work.
But what I'm saying is there is no us now. I mean, if a bunch of people stopped working tomorrow, the government might sign emergency measures to bring 2 million immigrants in right away and give them your jobs.
Sure. Well, there hasn't been enough.
There's no us. This is what. Okay, so let's start to tie this whole thing together. Destroy the family, create radical self-involvement, which is what they've done. And from there, create a global society where any resource can be met, just like you're pressing a button to get a can of Pepsi to come out of a machine. This is the whole plan. So stage one was to take out the family, and stage two is globalize. You see, every time we engage,
we don't have our own individuality anymore. We don't have our country anymore.
No, we don't. We have
no sovereignty at all anymore.
I would venture to say
that's what they're going for. No sovereignty at all.
I would venture to say that there's never been enough.
Well, that's debatable. I would have to. That would be a good conversation.
Well, I mean, look back at historical times. Caesar, the pharaohs of Egypt, 3,500 years ago, pretty much they all did the same thing that government's doing today, and the people have resisted ever since, and they've never been. See, I believe for one that the people that are in control want to be aduled. They want to be held up on a pedestal. They want to be glorified. And
they want to become gods. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So I got to ask here, because when people get into the us and them thing, would you pass these tests, Steve?
Pass what test?
So if all of the power and money were given to you, you would stay a benign human being? You're sure about that?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I thought about it many times. Absolutely.
I wouldn't be. What's the greatest temptation you've ever had? Have you ever had more than $5 million in your bank account?
I've never had more than 5,000.
Okay, so you've never been tempted by power.
No.
You don't know how you're going to stand up to it. Power is Power knows what to whisper to everybody. So power whispered in Hillary Clinton's ears like 45, 50 years ago, you're going to change the world for the better. Under that expression, all of the malignancy and evil she's brought into the world, she rationalizes. Okay?
Right.
And that's how power works.
People do it all day long, Bruce. People do it all day long.
Absolutely.
Actually, you know what?
It's narcissism is what it is, where they're only self-consumed and it's all about self, okay? So someone I think it was you, Bruce, you had mentioned ego earlier, and I was having a conversation with some friends about this. What is the definition of ego? And is ego actually the problem? Okay. So I'm going to read the definition. Ego, it says here, is a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. Synonyms being self-esteem, self-importance, self-worth, self-respect, self-image, self-confidence. Now, if you ask me, none of those things are bad things, except when they're taken to the extreme, just like everything else. Anything to the extreme, whether it's on one end or the other, okay, is not a good thing. It is about balance. It is about self-control, self-awareness, self-respect, self-love, okay?
Let me have a minute
so
here,
to
Sunshine.
say that we have to demolish the ego, this to me is an absolute false narrative.
Let me have a minute here,
This whole demolishing of the ego. And it's the ego that's out of control that is the problem.
Can I get a minute here?
Mm-hmm.
I've always been the one where you either like me or you don't. You either love me or you don't. There's never been any kind of in between. I was mercilessly picked upon in school. I found out later what the reason was, because a lot of the girls thought I was good looking, and they would stop and talk to me, and their boyfriends would end up cracking me in the back of the head or something, or trying to hit me somewhere else. Or even if they weren't the boyfriends, they were the boys that liked this other girl that would happen to be talking to me. So
jealousy rearing its ugly head.
Jealousy, yes, exactly.
Right.
I've never really appreciated society's roles. I've never really liked society's roles. I think people can be moral. It's just that they're not. They're choosing to be amoral. They're choosing to go along with this system, like we were talking about a couple of minutes ago. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If we stop feeding this beast, it would die and wither away within 6 months.
Yes, I think so too. And I don't know if we are consciously choosing. I think most people are not consciously choosing because they are not self-aware of their own thoughts even. And this is part of the disconnect. Besides the poisoning and the programming, we are a species that's meant to be bonded together. And because we're so disconnected through this texting and chatting and not communicating with each other anymore, because we're so disconnected from each other, we've become extremely disconnected from ourselves. And I think it's gotten to the level where it has literally affected our ability to comprehend even. Not just this, inability to communicate with each other and hear what each other is saying, but literally our ability to comprehend. Because people can see or read a news story that says fluoride is a neurotoxin and it's in your water and not even comprehend what that says.
Yeah, so what? It's not affecting me, though.
See, that's a problem. That's a serious problem.
It is affecting you.
We're not comprehending each other anymore because we're not communicating with each other anymore. And that means that we're not bonding with each other anymore. This is by design, folks. How many people have gotten into a text message thing with somebody and it was completely misinterpreted, and next thing you know, you're in this huge argument over this text message misinterpretation. This is just ridiculous what's going on. Whatever happened to picking up the phone and calling somebody? I have friends who they'll do the whole text message thing instead of, it would have taken them a lot less time to just call. So I don't get it myself, but I see the effects.
You're just too old fashioned. You're just too.
I had to figure out why. I had to figure out why people weren't comprehending and seeing what's really going on. Now, in my case, I just didn't pay attention for 20 years. That was my bad. I take responsibility for that. But what is really the problem? And I had to just get down to the root. And I think the other root of the problem is it does have to do with the whole bonding thing, bonding within the family unit, bonding within a society, bonding within your community, bonding within our tribe. Why our tribe is so important, why connection to our culture is so important. And now we're talking about a world that's heading down this road of removing our individual culture and country from us. And those are what make us who we are. Those histories, those our family histories and our uniqueness in our cultures. To remove that is just a travesty. And where did we lose the respect for each other's differences in our cultures? And how has that been manipulated? Just like with religion, isn't it all the same God? I think it is. I think bottom line, if you want to get right down to it, the creator of all is the same God in all these religions that are fighting against each other because of their religion. Just because they don't believe that whatever story is attached to that. And it's kind of crazy to me. Are we that easily manipulated that we can't even see that?
Yeah.
It's the same God that we're talking about. So who cares what way you find to believe to get there? You go for it, I say. As long as you're not trying to kill me, right? Because of it. Our journeys are individual, are a very individual journey. I think getting to wherever it is that we need to go as humanity all together is allowing each other to experience our journey and having respect for each other's journey, whatever that is. You don't have to do it my way. What's right for me, it may not be right for you.
I keep, Sunshine, I keep telling people, why do you think these, look at the word government, break it down. The ancient Latin for government is control over the mind. Govern is to control something. Ment is just the smaller version of mentality.
We have to do a show sometime, Steve, on the whole etymology thing.
Yeah,
because
and look at politics, too.
The language that we're using is casting spells. We do it in school when we learn to write. We're writing spells, people.
Yeah.
We're casting spells. we manifest all of this, and how sad that we've been manipulated into manifesting this.
Yeah, and look at
Because we are so much better than this. We all want so much more than this.
Look at politics.
And we can have it. We can have it in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
If we could get together collectively.
Look at politics too.
Mm-hmm.
Politics, the ancient Latin for politics. Poly means many, and ticks. Well, we all know what a tick is. And as far as
the last 10 minutes here, guys, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Steve, but I want to take the last 10 minutes here because I would like to hear, each take 5 minutes here or whatever, and let me know what you think as men, okay? What men can do today to start changing things around. What role can they take back that could change things around, that you really think would make a difference?
You want to start off there, Bruce?
You want to go,
Sure.
Bruce?
Yeah, sure. Geez, you've put me into the cynic's corner here. I don't think anything can be done. I think that we needed, unless there's something I'm not seeing. I would say somebody like Donald Trump's a good start, just to break, if for no other reason than just to be a bull in a china shop with old institutions and values, to just trash them a little bit so people get a little less attached to them. Generally, the intellectual class governs a society, people with university educations and graduate degrees, and they're all coming out of the same mold now. There's no difference. Yeah, brilliant and overcompetent professors are being threatened with losing their tenure for refusing to move beyond the binary pronoun thing for gender association.
Those are the things that are wrong. What can men do? Because this is the topic that we're talking about.
Okay.
And so what
right.
can men do today?
Never abandon your own creation. So even if you get divorced, you have to stay with those children, even to the detriment of a new romantic relationship. You have to raise your children. I would advocate men not to raise somebody else's children. Do not get into relationships with single mothers. It's a waste of your time, and you're rewarding them. And you're not doing anything for yourself at a biological or human level. Don't aid and abet it. Don't feel guilty. It's all a program. It's all nonsense. So if you want to restore things and you want to get things back a little bit closer to where they used to be, don't do what's being done in the modern world now. Don't find yourself in that trap. Now, that's going to take discipline because men are really weak as far as the affections of a woman are concerned. So it has to be an almost like Islamic code that you have to make up your mind. I'm going to live this way. I'm going to put 100% into what I create because that's what I'm responsible. I brought that into the world. It did not exist before I created that child or those children. And then be very very reticent to get involved in somebody else's creation or project. Sorry, that's probably not what you wanted to hear, Sunshine, but I'm just kind of paraphrasing Stefan Molyneux there, who talks on this, Canadian philosopher who talks on this subject quite a bit.
I'm familiar with Stephen. His work is very good. And actually, I can understand what it is that you're saying and where that comes from, and I can see a little bit of, well, first of all, there's no arguing with that is your creation and you should be responsible for it. Absolutely 100%. I can tell you that my stepdad, though, my biological father gave up his rights as my father so that another man who wanted to be my father could raise me and do a good job that he couldn't do. And I love that. I love my stepfather as if he were the father that you created me, and he loves me as if I was his daughter that he created. And his influence in my life, his positive influence in my life, and his role as a man within our family unit and what he showed me, a real man, okay, is like. You don't see that very often anymore. So I can't necessarily agree with what you're saying as far as don't take on the responsibility of being father to another child. The children are the innocent ones in all of this. If you have it in you to do that, then please do that. They need good nurturing.
What happened to your biological dad?
He was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and
he left your life completely.
Right, and then he gave up his rights when my mom met my stepdad. They approached him and asked him if it would be okay if he adopted us, And he agreed to that, and then within a few years after that, he was murdered. So.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sorry to hear that, Sunshine.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a counterbalancing story. So I broke up with the great love of my life about 13 years ago, and she went her way, I went mine. And then 2 years ago, I heard from her, and I was single at the time, but I was where I'm living now, which is not North America. But I really love this woman, so I went back to see her. She lives in British Columbia, and we started a romance again. She had 2 children at this point. One was 7 and one was 5, and the biological father was not seeing the oldest child as a result of her decision. I don't know what went down in the house, but the ex-husband had 2 master's degrees. He was a social worker. He was a brilliant guy, and I didn't see any evidence of what the woman I loved was saying. It seemed to be all in her head. We struggled along with this for about 8 months or a year, and then she gave me notice that she was going to court to prevent the biological father from seeing the youngest child. And her reason was that the oldest child was upset when the younger would come back after 2-day visits with the biological father because the younger child had a father and she did not. Now, when the love of my life told me this, I said, if you do that, we're done. And we talked about it for 4 weeks. She did it. We're done. You know, it's just there's so much insanity out there. There's so much, stupidity. And now your case is unique.
We're definitely not. We're not thinking about the children, okay? We really aren't. And this is like we talked about the whole at the beginning, the dating scene, okay? People are still children themselves. Adults are not stepping up to the plate and taking responsibility as adults within their own lives, within their family units, within their society, within their community, within the world. We are adults, people.
Yep. We need to wrap it up.
Children, the innocent ones in all of this. So, yes, Steve, please, I'm sorry. Please take a minute or two here before we have to go and tell me what you think that the number one thing men can do.
Well, I think it's simple. It's just a sacrifice. I think we need to sacrifice. We need to think, do we need all these flashy things to survive? Do we need all these? Do you know that most people in the world believe that social status is more important than saving a child from what we're facing coming up next 20, 30 years, being a slave.
Yeah.
But I think sacrifice, and I could expand on that, but we don't really have the time.
That's absolutely endemic to the human race.
Yeah. And that's what it is when you take on the role of being a father to what you created. It is a sacrifice. We have to stop being selfish. So I'm going to leave it there, guys, and I want to thank you, Steve and Bruce, and I want to thank my friend Ryan who called in and got us started today. I thank everybody for listening. I hope that this really has made you to start think about your role as a man or a woman in this world within your family units, and we start reclaiming ourselves again as men, as women, as human beings. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to People's Internet Radio. I'll be on tomorrow again with some wonderful women, and we hope to see you then.